The African Union estimates that about 70,000 skilled professionals emigrate from the continent each year. Africa, the world's most youthful continent, has an estimated 10 to 12 million young people joining the labor force every year. But the continent is only able to create just about 3 million jobs annually. So what happens to the rest? Many young Africans are moving to Europe and America for economic opportunities. On the other hand, many European countries like Germany are welcoming this talent to meet their own shortages. It's estimated that the German labor market needs to grow by 400,000 workers per year. So to fill the gap, the government is reforming its immigration laws to attract foreign professionals with the introduction of a so-called blue card. Here's how it works.
To get one, you'll need to meet 3 out of these 4 criteria. You have to have a university degree or professional qualification, professional experience of at least 3 years, German language skills or experience living in Germany, and you're aged under 35. As the baby boomer generation retires, our labor market will seriously shrink. So we need immigration. Germany needs about 400,000 immigrants a year. And we'll have to make Germany more attractive, especially for highly qualified and skilled workers. Germany's shortage of skilled workers has hit an all-time high. A recent survey found almost 90% of companies that took part were feeling the effects of the shortage. And the vast majority agreed that it should be easier for skilled foreign workers to come here. The German government says the new Opportunity Card will do that by simplifying the current requirements and making them more transparent. But many say there are other issues to tackle if Germany wants to attract foreign workers and retain them. In particular, Germany's heavy bureaucracy means things like changing jobs or bringing your family to join you can become a complicated nightmare.
I have a lot of friends whom I really wanted to come to Germany, but they all decided to go to US or UK just because of all these requirements, because they don't want to struggle. Like, why would they want to struggle if they get around same or actually more salary in other places and without a barrier of language?
Germany was recently ranked the world's worst country for expats when it comes to essentials like finding housing, learning the language, and digital services. And it scored very low on friendliness, too. Even if the government can't fix those things, experts are urging them to address the things they can. We have to make sure that we reduce these hurdles as far as possible, whether that's bureaucratic hurdles like trying to get an appointment for a visa or to get qualifications recognized, because people will compare Germany to other countries that don't have those hurdles. The Opportunity Card alone won't solve Germany's labor force problem, or the issues foreign workers face once they get here. But it's a start, and a signal that Germany is working toward a new kind of migration policy. The government plans to issue a limited number of cards each year according to demand on the labor market. Would you apply?
With me now in the studio is Piwe Nyakama, originally from South Africa and now living and working here in Berlin as a human resource manager. Hello, Piwe. Nice to have you in the studio.
Hi, Eddie. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So first things first, what made you decide to come and work in Germany?
It's actually a very funny story because it wasn't a decision. So mine was a case of serendipity. I was looking for like a really huge change and I was feeling stuck in my country and not knowing, what else, like what next. And then I received a message on LinkedIn, asking me if I would consider an opportunity. At the time, I didn't even know it was in Berlin. It was so crazy because I was already in the process of looking. I was just like, okay, I haven't heard of this company. Okay, I'll see you for an interview. And that's how my journey began.
That's interesting. Yeah. That's a brave move, audacious move to just respond to that. But how has it been like working and settling in Germany? You've been here a bit over a year, is it?
Just over a year now. I mean, there's pros and there's cons to it as well. It was really exciting in the beginning. New country, it's like Berlin is a melting pot of all cultures. Here you meet people that you wouldn't necessarily meet in our own countries. So it was really exciting. Landed here. The weather was great. It was summer. a lot of the things that we didn't have in our country, like, people are free, and it's just like such a dynamic environment. But obviously the cons then is the bureaucracy that you have to go through, the language barriers. You have to go to the immigration office, open a bank account, find an apartment. If you've lived in Berlin, that is almost impossible. Yeah. So I stayed in temp apartments for a bit until I could secure my own apartment, and it's very competitive. Yeah. And just the language barriers and things aren't easy. And the post, everything is done via post.
Don't get me started on that. Don't get me started. So, as someone whose job involves recruitment, because you're with the HR, right? So your job, obviously, with recruiting means you get from all parts of the world people coming. Now, people coming from the continent, there's an issue of brain drain. Yeah. Are you not concerned that your job is taking out such great talent from the continent?
So this is a very contentious issue, right? Because firstly, personally, I'm a Pan-Africanist, and I love Africa, and I love the continent, and I love my country. However, with all the economy dwindling, huge unemployment rates, people obviously want to live their best lives and they want to achieve their goals. So if I can change someone's, future, for example, by getting that talent, because with Africans, it's never just you. It's you working, but you're feeding like a whole family behind, right? So it's such a complex issue, because then those skill sets, we stay here in Europe, nobody really wants to go home because there's more opportunities. But then that means we're taking away the skills that could be building in our respective countries. So it is such a complex thing. So I think the question would be, how do we fix the situation back home that people feel comfortable to use their skills to build back home instead of running to countries that are already doing well? Yeah. So it's such a complex issue that probably needs more time to unpack. Yeah,
I wish I had more time to ask that question. I'm not going to bore you with that, but definitely well noted. Piwe Nyakama, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Now, as Africa contributes to the workforce abroad, it's also feeding the brain drain, where large numbers of those leaving are some of the continent's best educated and most highly skilled workers. Let's look at healthcare, for instance. The WHO has released a list of 55 countries who desperately need more healthcare workers, and over half of them are in Africa. The goal is to help these countries hold on to their experts, as they're already stretched thin and can't afford to lose more. Despite this warning, countries like Ghana and Nigeria continue to see a mass exodus of highly skilled workers. For more on this, let's bring in Richard Kwechu, Managing Editor of African Studies Quarterly at the Center for African Studies, University of Florida. Hello, Richard. Thanks a lot for your time. Now, after years of discouraging people from migrating, Germany is now talking about the enormous potential of migration and is seeking skilled labor from Africa. What do you make of that?
First of all, thank you so much for having me. I think this new law or policy sort of underscores the hypocrisy of most Western countries. For so long, most of these countries, Germany in particular, have been discouraging a lot of migrants from many developing countries. COVID came in. There's a lot of loss of skilled workers in Germany. There's a need to fill that gap. And now this is a policy they have implemented. So for me, when I look at it, it just shows how these policies have always been instituted from time and again to fit or benefit these countries as and when it works for them. Yeah.
You mentioned a word there, benefit. So let me just ask you, who will benefit most from such a deal?
Obviously, in implementing this deal, the Germans or the German government is looking at how it will benefit their economy. So they are looking at it more from their benefit. It will accrue to their economy, of course. But for most African countries, that means more skilled workers have been lost.
Yeah. And on that, you've been very vocal about Africa's brain drain situation and the impact on the continent. So what impact could Germany's new law have on that?
I mean, already African countries are losing thousands of skilled workers every year to most developed countries. The last data that I wrote about in 2018, Africa was losing about 3 billion. And this is a huge loss on the economy of most African countries.
Yeah, to what many or some Africans will say, sorry, not sorry, because Africa is producing more university graduates than the labor market can admit. With high youth unemployment, it's difficult to blame people for trying their luck elsewhere, isn't it?
I mean, definitely. As much as you would criticize Western countries for poaching these skilled workers from Africa, we also need to take a hard look at ourselves. Most African governments have been unable to provide opportunities that will match the skills of most of these trained individuals.
Let's end a bit on that in terms of solutions, because, it's not really a problem for people to move and work anywhere around the world. Actually, something I prefer should be encouraged. But what needs to be done if African governments don't want to lose majority of its bright minds?
I think, first of all, African countries need to prioritize the skills of their individuals. Many people receive training back home and feel their skills are not being used to effective use. So I think the starting point is to create those opportunities for skilled workers on the continent to be able to use their skills to help in developing the continent. And how would they do that? Is by creating employment opportunities, by creating incentive working environment, and paying people fairly for what they deserve. For many doctors in most African countries, what they would make in Europe and in America for a month, it's almost what they earn for a year working in Africa. And I think these are things that we need to work around if we really want our skilled workers to stay on the continent. And we also need to develop healthcare facilities, working environment to motivate people to be able to stay and give up their best on the continent.
Okay. Richard Kwechu, Managing Editor at African Studies Quarterly at the Center for African Studies, University of Florida. Thank you very much for your inputs.